And things like that you can get out there and put a meme out there and an image. So join that and complete that mission and see your work maybe used on Alex Jones's Facebook or just even within the Planet InfoWars group. And lastly, we see all kinds of great articles being written, like political opinions, current news, edible plants, survival 101, all kinds of great stuff. And in fact, I wanted to highlight this great article. It's called Raising Organic Chickens in the City or Country. And this guy is great. He actually goes through, it's by user KK. He goes through and he starts you off with, first off, check your laws, your ordinances. You don't want to upset your neighbor next door for having chickens in your backyard. But then he goes into just the little things you might not think about. Just in a 24-hour period, the sunlight that chickens need is how they produce their eggs. Or make sure the fence is secure. And choose the breed. Who even thinks about those kind of things? I don't. I mean, I'm a beginner when it comes to that. Then he goes into feeding, and then sweet success and enjoying the profits of your hard labor. So go out there, join a group, start a mission, complete missions, write articles. We're paying attention. And in fact, we actually want to start bringing you these updates daily or a couple more times a week, because we think that what you're doing is awesome, and it deserves a highlight. So keep it up. Planet InfoWars users, patriots, you guys are talking, and we're listening. So Christy Hightower here for PlanetInfoWars.com. Go and join the activist movement. Thanks. Till next time.
Alex Jones here with a message to fellow freedom lovers. The prognosis for the entire planetary economic system runs from bad to worse. The globalist model is to shut down societies and starve patriots out until they acquiesce to the global takeover. That's why we've assembled the most vital and important preparedness items at InfoWarsShop.com. These are items that I did research on, that I personally use. We've got the life straw, so you can turn fetid water into safe water anywhere you go. The K-Tor hand crank generator to charge up key equipment during power outages or out in the field. Strategic Relocation, 3rd edition by Joel Skousen. When Disaster Strikes by Matthew Stein. ThyroSafe, used by Homeland Security to protect yourself during any radiological event. Hand crank shortwave AM/FM radios. Everything that we've researched and found to be the best is available at InfoWarsShop.com, and your purchase makes our InfoWar possible. We're getting prepared. Are you? InfoWarsShop.com.
What do we do when the federal government steps outside of its constitutional boundaries? Do we ask federal bureaucrats in black robes to enforce limits of their own power? Well, Thomas Jefferson didn't think so, and neither do we. And that's because the rightful remedy to federal tyranny rests in the hands of the people and in the states. It's called nullification, and it's an idea whose time has come. And that brings us to today's guest. Jason Rink is the executive director of the Foundation for a Free Society, and he's here to talk about his new documentary film, Nullification, The Rightful Remedy, which is the most comprehensive documentary on the subject of the 10th Amendment and nullification. And he joins us now in studio. Jason, it's good to have you with us today. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. When I first was told that I'm going to review a DVD about the 10th Amendment, I thought, you know, I like the 10th Amendment, but I just didn't know it would be as exciting as it was. I mean, it is a very well put together documentary. So I was pleasantly surprised and a little bit embarrassed about how much I didn't know about the 10th Amendment as well. So, and thankfully you're here today to kind of break down this piece for us and tell us a little bit more about the 10th Amendment and nullification. And before we get started, I want to show a clip from the documentary. Okay. Here's a clip from Nullification, The Rightful Remedy on the InfoWars Nightly News.
The peace president bombs countries around the world. The drug war rages on. The Patriot Act exists. The Fed prints and prints and prints. Bailouts, mandates, regulations, they never seem to end. When government does not follow the rules given to it, what do you do about it? Do you march on Washington, D.C. to beg federal politicians to limit their own power? Do you go to federal court in the hope that federal judges will limit federal power? Do you vote the bums out in the hope that the new bums repeal power that's been handed to them?
Well, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison both warned us that if the federal government ever became the sole and exclusive arbiter of the extent of its own powers, that power would always grow. Jefferson wrote, he said, a nullification of the act is the rightful remedy whenever, now every single time, the federal government violates the Constitution.
And the DVD is available at INFOWARSshop.com. And with us in the studio right now, you are the writer, director, and producer of the film. Tell us what inspired you to make a documentary on nullification and the 10th Amendment.
Well, I've been interested in the 10th Amendment and the ramifications of the 10th Amendment, how so many of the issues that we're dealing with, the federal overreach, is really just an example of the federal government not obeying the 10th Amendment. It's not an issue of having to pass more laws. It's already been enshrined there in the 10th Amendment. And so I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization called the Foundation for a Free Society. We sponsored what was called the Nullify Now Tour across this country, where we went to over a dozen cities, talking to people all over the nation about nullification, what's happening across the country, how states are using the concept of nullification to fight back against federal overreach. It was during that process that we began to make this film and decided, you know, if we could make just a 72-minute film that concisely boiled down some of these ideas, we could use that as a major activist tool throughout the nation.
Well, like I said, it was a pleasant surprise. It was very entertaining, very educational at the same time. In fact, we're going to play another clip. This one is about the 10th Amendment Center. And when we come back, if you could break down some of the core beliefs of the 10th Amendment Center, if you will.
Sure.
Let's take a look.
The Constitution of the United States. A set of rules to govern the government. Ignored and trampled by both Democrats and Republicans for far too long. So, what do we do about it?
We don't need no stinking permission to exercise our rights.
From the 10th Amendment Center, around the nation and into your ears, welcome to TRS.
There's a growing movement of people around the country.
Ground zero for the 10th Amendment movement.
The answer to 1984 is
The 10th Amendment Center. Tell us, what is it?
It's about sticking to the Constitution.
Okay, and again, that was a clip from Nullification, the Rightful Remedy. Break down some of the core beliefs of the 10th Amendment Center.
Well, the core beliefs of the 10th Amendment Center really aren't that different than the core beliefs of, you know, the predominant founding fathers of this nation. You know, the idea that the federal government was created by the states and not the other way around. The people establish and delegate power to the states and then to the federal government. And so, you know, our rights are not granted by government. It's not government that enshrined our rights in the Constitution. The Constitution just, you know, made manifest rights that already existed because of our humanity. We also talk about a core belief of, you know, a government without limits is the definition of tyranny. You know, limited government is the key here. And if the government could just run roughshod over the Constitution, which is the employee handbook by which, you know, they were established to begin with, then that power is going to be a tyranny. We've seen that all throughout history. And so the idea that the states created the federal government, at the end of the day, the federal government cannot be looked to as the final arbiter of what's constitutional, that it can't be its own referee. That's really what's at the core of the idea of states' rights and nullification.
Well, you must be doing something right, because you're getting your share of criticism from the mainstream news media. You know, I've seen MSNBC's Rachel Maddow and others, you know, they routinely attack the 10th Amendment. and demonize the 10th Amendment on a routine basis as well. That's only when they give it any attention. Usually it's blacked out altogether, but when they bring it up, it's demonized. In fact, we have some clips right now that we're going to show our viewers, and this is an example of the establishment media's demonization of the 10th Amendment. Let's take a look.
The concept is called nullification, or state sovereignty, the notion that states can opt out whenever the federal government tries to exert a power not enumerated in the Constitution.
And as well as being a rabid proponent of slavery, John Calhoun, to that end, championed the cause of nullification. Nullification, the idea that states could and should refuse to follow federal laws they didn't like, that they thought went beyond the powers of the federal government.
If you're a little rusty on the Constitution, here is what the 10th Amendment says. Quote, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. The one little problem with the argument from the 10thers, as they like to call it, is this other part of the Constitution that's called Article 1, you know, Article 1, quote, the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, to pay the debts, and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. That means it unambiguously authorizes Congress to spend money in ways that benefit the nation. You know, Social Security, Medicare, Veterans Care, et cetera, et cetera. So what are the 10thers really up to?
The problem with those that are looking to the 10th Amendment for support is that the Supreme Court really offers very little encouragement for these types of claims.
A conservative group called the 10th Amendment Center has been pushing a lot of the anti-health reform stuff, but they put that in the context of nullification, and they're pushing for other kinds of nullification, too.
Ron, most people in their right-thinking mind know that the 10th Amendment is a bunch of baloney.
Since the election of a black president, dozens of states, primarily red states, have flirted with sovereignty, some actually passing legislation declaring sovereignty on what they consider state issues.
Your federal laws don't apply here, Yankees. United States, schmoonited states.
Well, and as predictable as all that is, it's still shocking to see the ignorance and the complicity of the establishment media. What are your thoughts when you see reports like that on television?
Well, you know, I mean, it's pretty much par for the course. And really, like you said before, it's not just the left that attacks it. I mean, the left does, but the Heritage Foundation attacks the concept of nullification.